She lost interest. Your boss overlooked you. Your own friends don't value you anymore. And you're still wondering why? Most men today are not rejected because they're unworthy. They're rejected because they're too available, too reactive, too attached. The world doesn't hate you. It's simply ignoring who you've allowed yourself to become. This video will hit you where it hurts, but where it matters. Because if rejection keeps breaking you, you were never built right. I've created the most valuable ebook ever written for men, forged with over 2,000 years of Stoic wisdom. The Stoic Relationship Blueprint for Men. Click the link in the comments and get it now before it disappears from the public. Comment below, I choose strength. Now let's talk about what high-value men do when life spits in their face. Number 1. They accept reality without whining. A man's downfall begins the moment he negotiates with truth, the moment he tells himself comforting stories instead of confronting what is, the moment he refuses to accept that the world moves on without asking how he feels about it, and instead of standing up, facing what broke him, and walking through it, he sits down, curses the pain, and waits for life to come back and apologize, which it never will, because reality is not here to coddle men, it's here to test them, not with obvious challenges, but with cold indifference, with women who lose interest with no explanation, friends who drift when there's nothing left to take, jobs that use your best years and spit you out without a thank you. And you either adapt and evolve through these moments with brutal clarity, or you descend into a version of yourself that spends every day blaming, whining, explaining, spiraling into fantasies about what could have been, instead of building what could still be. And the man who refuses to face the truth becomes a slave to false hope, to excuses, to the illusion that life owes him closure, when in reality, life only gives men two choices: build or break, stay or step forward, level up or sink beneath your own excuses. And what separates high-value men from the rest is not that they have fewer problems, it's that they never trade their dignity for pity. They never expect the world to pause for their tears. They wipe them, stand tall and say, "Noted," because pain doesn't scare them, confusion doesn't cripple them, rejection doesn't define them. It reveals them. It reveals where they've been giving too much, trusting too easily, compromising too deeply. And once they see it, they don't beg for the past to make sense. They build a future that makes the past irrelevant, and most men never reach that level because they're addicted to fantasy, to thinking, if they just wait long enough, the girl will come back, the boss will regret letting them go, the people who ghosted them will one day appreciate their loyalty. But high-value men don't waste mental bandwidth on people who left. They understand that some losses are upgrades in disguise, some endings are clean exits from slow poison, and if you need someone to explain why they disrespected you, ignored you, left you, you're not ready to lead, because leaders don't chase answers. They create direction. They don't seek apologies. They create boundaries. They don't drown in the rejection. They walk across it like stone, using each one as a step forward. And the man who gets that starts winning. Not because he's lucky or smarter or born into privilege, but because he refuses to be the kind of man who needs external permission to feel valuable, and so he becomes dangerous, not to others, but to weakness, to mediocrity, to every inner voice that told him he wasn't enough. He silences it, not with noise, but with action, with clarity, with results, and that transformation begins the moment he fully accepts reality, not half-heartedly, not while still fantasizing about revenge or hoping to be understood, but fully, deeply, with every fiber of his being, knowing that the world doesn't adjust itself for fragile men, and life will never feel sorry for you, no matter how hard you try to explain your pain. And if you keep explaining your worth to those who didn't recognize it, you'll spend your life waiting in rooms you were never meant to enter again. And that's why real men don't ask, "Why did she do it? Why did they treat me that way? Why did this happen to me?" They ask, "What does this teach me? What will I now do differently? What part of me needed this pain to grow?" Because growth is never born in safety. It's born in the moments you're stripped of your illusions, when everything you thought was yours is ripped away, and you're left standing with nothing but your breath and your will. And in that stillness, the real you is forged, not the man you pretend to be, not the version who smiles for approval, but the one who moves without permission, who says less and sees more, who replaces blame with precision, and becomes the kind of man who cannot be rattled, because he doesn't place his sense of identity in things that can be taken away. And that's the key. High-value men do not crumble from rejection because they were never leaning on others for validation in the first place. They don't collapse when she leaves because they never let her define their sense of worth. They don't beg to be chosen because they've already chosen themselves. And when a man operates from that space of internal clarity, unshakable direction, brutal acceptance of life as it is, every rejection becomes not a wound, but a wake-up call, not a loss, but liberation, not a humiliation, but a hard reset. And when you stop resisting the truth, when you stop fantasizing that one day they'll come back and finally see your value, you'll realize your value was never lost. It was just buried under all the ways you tried to be what others wanted instead of being what you were meant to become. And that's why rejection doesn't weaken high-value men. It purifies them. It cuts away the neediness, the over-explaining, the approval-seeking, and leaves behind something harder, cleaner, more focused. And when you become that, a man grounded in brutal self-honesty, a man who no longer gives explanations to people who were never qualified to understand him, you start to win without needing applause. You start to grow without needing to prove. You start to rise because you said so. And in that space, the pain that once broke you becomes the discipline that builds you. And now they can leave, they can mock, they can doubt, they can disappear. But nothing they do defines you anymore, because you've already decided what kind of man you are, and you've accepted that the only person who needs to believe it is you. Number 2. They guard their energy like gold. A high-value man understands something that most men spend decades learning the hard way, that your energy is not infinite, and who or what you give it to determines the quality of your entire life. Rejection doesn't destroy most men because of the loss. It destroys them because of the leak. Every time they explain themselves to someone who already made up their mind to misunderstand them, every time they try to win back a woman who showed she has no capacity to love them in the first place, every time they chase conversations that lead to nowhere, beg for closure that only reopens wounds, or linger in environments where their presence is treated like a nuisance instead of a privilege, they hemorrhage energy until there's nothing left of them but resentment and regret. The high-value man refuses to be available to every invitation, every conflict, every subtle jab at his worth, or every manipulative guilt trip designed to rope him back into old cycles. When a woman ghosts him, flakes on plans, or starts pulling away, he doesn't chase her down for explanations, paragraphs, or final words. He simply removes himself and puts that energy where it belongs, into the gym, into the morning runs that clear his mind and strengthen his spirit, into the projects he once abandoned, into becoming harder to access by turning rejection into results. While other men are stuck replaying conversations in their head and stalking social media for clues, he's pressing iron, making plans, investing in skills, building assets, and reading the books that shift his frame permanently. He understands that emotional chaos is a luxury he can't afford. It's not that he lacks emotion, it's that he knows when it's being weaponized against him. He doesn't let people have access to his emotions when they haven't earned access to his presence. When someone tries to provoke him into a fight, guilt trip him into apologizing for his boundaries, or mock him for elevating, he doesn't engage. He elevates further. He sees drama as an energy drain and handles it the same way he handles a poor investment. He pulls out before it costs him peace. He doesn't argue over texts, doesn't explain his absence, doesn't justify his priorities, and doesn't negotiate with disrespect. He's not emotionally unavailable, he's emotionally disciplined. And the reason rejection doesn't ruin him is because he already lives by this code. If it costs him clarity, it's too expensive. If it costs him progress, it's too cheap. If it costs him peace, it's not for sale. His energy is not accessible to every phone call, every "we need to talk," every bad vibe conversation disguised as concern. He's too focused, too aware, too committed to where he's going. He doesn't re-engage with the woman who left him confused and depleted. He doesn't sit in comment sections defending his masculinity. He doesn't argue with people who don't have the life he wants. He doesn't keep emotional open tabs with people who paid for his presence in disrespect. He knows that life gets better not when you win people over, but when you remove the wrong ones completely. Rejection isn't a wound for him, it's a filter. And once someone disrespects his presence, he never needs to be told twice. He doesn't relight old flames. He doesn't answer old calls. He doesn't go back for closure. He creates distance that protects his elevation. And in that distance, he pours energy into things that compound: his body, his money, his purpose, his skills, and his emotional regulation. When most men fall into spirals after being rejected, chasing highs from women who don't even respect themselves, wasting nights at bars, draining themselves in meaningless conversations, he is alone, not lonely, doing deadlifts in a quiet gym at 11 p.m., pushing through his final reps not to forget her, but to become someone so focused that even her memory has no place to rest. And he's not obsessed with showing her what she missed. He's obsessed with becoming the kind of man who would never be ignored again, not because of external validation, but because his own growth is too loud to leave room for lack. His energy is not recycled back into relationships that dishonored him. It's redirected into sharpening his mind, expanding his income, rewriting his identity, and rebuilding his standard. He starts waking up earlier, cutting out sugar, cutting out meaningless sex, cutting out friends who only check in when they need something, and cutting out every single excuse that kept him weak. He starts running in the mornings, not just for health, but to feel what it means to choose pain over comfort. He picks up the book that's been collecting dust for years, the one he bought when he still had dreams before comfort killed them. He makes his room a sanctuary, his schedule a weapon, and his habits sacred. He begins treating himself like he's worth protecting, because that's what guarding energy truly means. Choosing to live in a way where your focus is more expensive than anyone's opinion. And when people say he's changed, they're right. He has, because rejection revealed who never deserved him, and now he's making sure they never get the chance again. He knows that the biggest mistake a man can make after rejection is to waste more of himself trying to get back into a room where he was treated like an afterthought. So he leaves the room, burns the map, and rebuilds in a place where his presence is protected, his time is honored, and his growth is non-negotiable. Because once a man realizes the price of his energy, rejection stops being something to fear and starts being something to be grateful for. Number 3, they avoid self-pity at all costs. High-value men have no room in their system for self-pity because they understand that every second spent feeling sorry for themselves is a second stolen from the work that could change their entire life. They do not see rejection as a justification to collapse. They see it as an invitation to rise. When the world tells them no, they don't slump into emotional paralysis. They rise into unbreakable awareness. Most men drown not because life is cruel, but because they internalize every no as a definition of their worth. They confuse rejection with identity. They turn loss into a narrative of failure. They wrap themselves in emotional paralysis, hoping that the world will feel sorry for them, enough to rescue them. But nothing changes, because the world doesn't respond to tears. It responds to truth. High-value men don't ask for emotional comfort from people who left them behind. They don't scroll through old photos hoping she'll come back. They don't replay conversations, wondering if one more text would have changed the outcome. They know better. Because once a man ties his worth to someone else's decisions, he becomes emotionally bankrupt. He begins to measure his existence by how he's treated instead of who he is. And that's the fast track to despair. A high-value man rewrites the narrative. He may feel the rejection, but he doesn't indulge it. He may bleed, but he never bathes in it. He lets the pain pass through him without becoming him. He doesn't deny it, but he doesn't worship it. He doesn't broadcast his wounds as a cry for help. He doesn't post cryptic quotes online hoping someone will notice. He processes in private, repairs in silence, and builds in focus. And when the ache comes, and it does, he doesn't collapse. He works, not to distract himself, but to forge himself. He reads the book instead of texting her again. He cooks his own meal instead of hoping she'll ask if he's eaten. He calls a friend who builds him up, not the one who helps him spiral. He trains his body when his heart is aching. He sharpens his skill when his mind wants to wander, because he knows there is only one cure for emotional helplessness, and that's ownership. The truth is, most men secretly enjoy self-pity because it gives them an excuse to do nothing. It gives them a villain to blame and a fantasy to believe in. It allows them to stay frozen in their past instead of taking command of their future. But high-value men burn the fantasy to the ground. They stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" They don't demand sympathy from the world. They command excellence from themselves. They don't want to be rescued. They want to be refined. They reject the victim mindset entirely because they understand that life only respects those who respect themselves. And nothing is more disrespectful to yourself than thinking you are powerless. When she walks away, he doesn't collapse. He studies. When life says, "You're not ready," he doesn't cry. He prepares. When the business fails, he doesn't disappear. He pivots. He doesn't post about fake loyalty. He doesn't beg for support. He becomes so strong, so disciplined, so focused that his success becomes the loudest testimony. Not because he wants to prove people wrong, but because he has nothing left to prove. He isn't driven by revenge. He is driven by clarity, and he knows that self-pity is the drug of the lost. The more you consume it, the more you hallucinate a version of yourself that is weak, abandoned, and owed something. But nothing is owed. Everything must be earned. Respect, value, love, growth. And none of it is coming to a man who waits for the world to fix him. So he fixes himself, slowly, deliberately, brutally. He does the hard things when no one is watching. He writes his own code of behavior. He chooses discipline over dopamine. He chooses structure over sympathy. He doesn't need people to feel bad for him. He needs to become so good that they regret ever doubting him. He knows that self-pity is not a healing mechanism. It is a prison, and he escapes it not by comfort, but by action. Action is how he turns heartbreak into strength. Action is how he turns rejection into redirection. Action is how he turns loneliness into power. And when the tears come, and they do, he doesn't suppress them. He lets them fall once, then stands up and keeps moving. Because pain is not the enemy, paralysis is. Emotion is not the enemy, inaction is. He tells himself the hard truth, that she wasn't the one, that he wasn't ready, that life isn't fair, that support isn't promised. And from those hard truths, he builds something greater than hope. He builds a system, a personal code, a way of operating that no rejection can destabilize. a way of living that no heartbreak can derail. He becomes a man who's grounded not in what people give him, but in what he gives himself. And when he walks through life, he's not numb, he's intentional. He still feels, but he doesn't beg. He still remembers, but he doesn't retreat. He still wants love, but he doesn't worship it. He makes space for growth where others seek escape. He fills his hours with progress where others seek pity. He builds a routine so powerful that even on his worst days, he's still climbing. He may lose people, but he never loses momentum. And that's the difference. Most men want to be saved. High-value men want to be sharpened. Most men want comfort. High-value men want command. Most men sit and wait for someone to validate their value. High-value men build a life so full that validation becomes irrelevant. That's why rejection doesn't destroy them, it defines them. It is not their ending, it is their beginning. And if you're still waiting for someone to fix what broke you, remember this: the longer you wait, the further behind you fall. And the man you could have become, the one who didn't need pity, who didn't need rescue, who didn't beg for love, is waiting for you on the other side of your excuses. Start walking. Number 4, they detach from outcomes. A high-value man doesn't bind his worth to the result. He binds it to the effort, the principle, the pursuit, and the man he becomes through it all. Most men live like gamblers, placing all their emotional chips on one woman, one job, one text back, one outcome, hoping that if it all goes their way, they'll finally feel whole, worthy, complete. But the problem is that when you tie your identity to an external outcome, you surrender your power the moment that outcome slips from your grip. So when she leaves, they fall apart. When the promotion doesn't come, they spiral. When the deal breaks, they panic. When that person chooses someone else, they question their entire self-worth. But a high-value man plays a different game. He's not cold, he's committed to not allowing his emotions to be dictated by things he can't control. Detachment for him is not indifference, it's discipline. It's the understanding that he can give everything, love deeply, invest fully, show up powerfully, and still walk away with peace if it doesn't align. Because he wasn't in it for the guarantee, he was in it for the growth. And while most men grip tighter when they feel rejection coming, trying to force affection, manipulate outcomes, or plead for clarity, the high-value man lets go the moment he feels the mismatch. Not out of fear, but out of deep respect for his own path. He doesn't need to win every time to know his worth. He doesn't base his self-respect on someone else's acceptance. He understands that he can give his best and still be misunderstood, overlooked, or unchosen. And that has nothing to do with his value and everything to do with compatibility, timing, or the unseen factors of life. Most men never learn to let go. They grip dead situations, revive dying connections, stay in one-sided relationships, hold on to people who left them months ago in spirit, only because they don't know who they are without that attachment. But he knows that what stays with force will leave with ease, that what's meant will stay without pressure. So he doesn't beg, he doesn't chase, he doesn't convince. He makes his standards clear, his intentions known, and his path visible. If they match, they walk with him. If they don't, he keeps walking, without bitterness, because he's not trying to manipulate outcomes. He's creating alignment, and he knows this. If a situation can fall apart just because he stops pushing, it was never meant to stand in the first place. He trains himself to enjoy the process of building his body, nurturing a bond, creating a vision, not because it guarantees results, but because the process itself is where his power lives. And this is why he's dangerous to those who try to manipulate him emotionally, because he doesn't flinch when they pull away. He doesn't chase when they withdraw. He doesn't crumble when plans change. He adjusts. He recalibrates. He focuses again. Because the man who is not attached to outcomes is free from emotional slavery. And freedom is the most feared trait in a man, because no one can control a man who is at peace with letting go. He lives by one principle: I control my input, not your reaction. And that gives him an untouchable strength, because no failure, no delay, no ghosting, no disappointment can derail a man who never depended on it for his peace in the first place. That's the rarest kind of power, and it's earned in the quiet decision to stop needing everything to go your way and start learning how to rise no matter which way it goes. Number 5. They turn rejection to their favor. When life slams the door, most men stare at it for years, hoping it reopens. High-value men build a better entrance. They don't mourn rejection as if it were death, they resurrect purpose from it. Where others feel abandoned, they feel redirected. Where others feel broken, they feel refined. Because they've trained themselves to see rejection not as punishment, but as selection. Life, relationships, and people are filters, not failures. And when something or someone says no, he doesn't internalize it as proof that he's not enough. He translates it as feedback about what doesn't belong to his future. He doesn't sulk. He studies. He doesn't retreat. He reinvents. He doesn't beg to be let back in. He makes himself impossible to deny going forward. Every rejection becomes an audit. What did I ignore? What did I tolerate? What could I sharpen? Not from self-loathing, but from self-mastery. Because he knows that being rejected doesn't diminish his value. It just reveals the level of the room he was trying to enter. And sometimes that room wasn't designed for growth, so he upgrades his environment. He stops trying to prove himself to the crowd that never clapped. He stops trying to win back someone who left without looking back. He starts putting that time into himself, into discipline, into elevation. He turns pain into presence. That woman who walked away, he doesn't chase her. He improves himself so deeply that she wouldn't qualify to enter his life now. That job that passed him up, he doesn't write angry reviews or gossip about the unfairness. He starts building something that one day outshines them. That group that didn't invite him, he doesn't ask why. He builds a life so rich in vision and value that they eventually ask him how. Rejection, to most, is the end. To him, it's the start of redirection. It's the alarm clock that wakes him up from complacency. And the moment he's rejected, he doesn't sit still. He doubles down on his training, his clarity, his focus. He signs up for that course, hits that extra rep, rewrites that pitch, changes his look, builds his wardrobe, adjusts his routines, trims the fat from his life, not to impress, but to express the new version of himself, being born through the furnace of loss. And when others pity him, he doesn't explain. He builds. He transforms so completely that the man who was once left behind now stands in front of the same people who doubted him and doesn't even feel the need to remind them of their mistake. Because the revenge is not in the speech, it's in the level up. It's in the fact that he no longer seeks what he once begged for, that he now lives in a reality where their absence is irrelevant. And the man who learns to turn rejection into reinvention becomes the most unstoppable man alive. Because no weapon formed against him can prosper, he turns every weapon into a tool. Every no becomes a strategy. Every not now becomes a lesson. Every closed door becomes the reason he built his own empire. He doesn't fear loss. He doesn't dread rejection. He doesn't flinch at betrayal. Because he has mastered the one truth most never do, that what leaves you wasn't meant to hold you, and what breaks you only reveals where you need to reinforce your foundation. He builds from it. He doesn't need to be rescued. He becomes the kind of man who rescues others by showing them what's possible when you no longer let rejection decide your value. And that, right there, is what separates a boy from a man. A man doesn't wait to be chosen. He chooses himself. He doesn't wait to be appreciated. He lives in a way that no longer requires applause. He doesn't cry over being underestimated. He becomes so undeniable that even silence becomes respect. Because when you use rejection as fuel, you stop needing acceptance as oxygen. You breathe purpose now, you breathe power, and you don't look back. You've felt the pain. You've lived the rejection. You've watched people walk away, ignore you, forget you like you never mattered. But the truth is, they did you a favor, because now you see it clearly. This world doesn't wait for you to catch up. It rewards the man who builds through the pain, not the one who breaks beneath it. And if you're still hoping to be chosen by people who never valued you, you'll stay stuck right where you are, ignored, forgotten, replaceable. So, I have one question for you. Are you ready to be the man who never begs again? Are you ready to walk into every room knowing you belong without needing a single word of validation? Are you ready to take control, not just of your relationships, but of your entire life? Then get the book. The Stoic Relationship Blueprint for Men isn't just a guide. It's a weapon, a transformation tool, a code for real men who are done being broken. And I'm only releasing it to a limited number of buyers to preserve its power and protect the value of what's inside. Because not every man deserves this level of insight, only the ones that are ready. If that's you, click the link in the comments right now and take the first step towards becoming untouchable, not even by rejection.